Hello, hello. Give it a little 2 minutes. Try this again. What's up, guys? How's your Sunday going? Mr. Lindell, how are you, sir? For anybody that doesn't know, that's Mr. Lindell Wilson, the best faction staff in the world. So yeah, I think you can start. This is gonna be a short one today, guys, because we didn't have a busy week. But every time we do have meetings, I'm gonna try to do the live stream, just to stay on top of things. This next week is going to be hectic. We have a lot of meetings planned, so I'm going to give that schedule before we end off this podcast. So yeah, that's should be a fun week, and we have a lot of activities outside of Parliament as well. So that's going to be nice. So yeah, let's take a look back at what happened this last week. Well, first of all, the party would like to express their condolences to the family of Mr. Troy Washington, who sadly passed away last Tuesday. It was unexpected, and yeah, it's a tragedy. There's no other ways to explain it. So strength to the family, and one day at a time, man. One day at a time. Last week, what did we have last week on the schedule? Well, first of all, we were supposed to have a couple of meetings. Um, Monday and Tuesday, we did not have any meetings because it's actually supposed to be a preparation week. Um, but like MP Westcott Williams says, a preparation week is not a non-meeting week, so there can be meetings planned. We originally had the meeting with the Minister of Romy, the continuation on the public meeting concerning the delayed publication of the building permits, etc. I think we were at the questioning of the answering of the questions from round one. I think the minister had to return so that we can get those back and then go into clarifications and then to go into round two. But that meeting was postponed, partially also due to the passing of Mr. Troy Washington. So on Wednesday they only had the CC meeting, the Central Committee meeting for the approval for Parlatino, which I'm not a part of, so I wasn't there. And then on Thursday, we had a couple of interesting discussions with the Committee of Justice. Actually, we had a roundtable panel discussion on mental health and suicide prevention, where Turning Point and Mental Health Foundation came. We had it was a healthy discussion. Sadly, after I think it was around like 1 p.m., the meeting got cut short because of problems with the internet with LM. So we had to reschedule to continue that meeting on Friday morning. And that same day, we also had another meeting scheduled for another roundtable panel discussion on the rise in crime and the increase of violence in schools. Where I think two ministers were supposed to be present, and that was postponed to the next day, I believe. But that was closed doors, so we can't really talk too much about it. But that was also a healthy discussion. Had a lot of stakeholders there as well. It was good to hear, from the court of guardianship, from the police, from the prosecutor's office, and also from the ministers actually as to how they plan to go about this issue. But again, there was a closed door meeting, so we can't really divulge too much information. But what we can talk about is the discussion that we had on mental health and suicide prevention. We got two position papers from Dr. Tashina Maku, sorry, from Turning Point Foundation, and also from Dr. Tamika Lambert from Mental Health Foundation. And they discussed a lot of things. The official topic was suicide prevention, of course, but the meeting kind of centralized around mental health in general. And how we go about it in St. Martin. And if you can look back at the meeting, and I think if we can, I'm not sure. I'm going to ask if we can share the two documents that we received from the two doctors. Explaining a little bit about how things go here in St. Martin and the reality of mental health in St. Martin and their struggles. Because as we know in St. Martin, a lot of things, we are under budgeted for. We're understaffed, and even though we have these foundations doing their best, it's still not enough. It's still not enough. And one of the main things that I got from the meeting, of course, we spoke about victims, we spoke about mental health, we spoke about psychologists. But one thing that stood out for me was the fact that um, we don't have to. Well, this is what the doctors say, and I actually have to agree with them on this one. Going to a psychologist sort of has to be like the last step towards how to go about mental health struggles. They made it very clear that you can't just drop somebody by a psychologist and think that's going to fix them. No, no. The Most of the time, the fixes are not a psychologist. The fixes are within your own circle, within your community, retreats, etc. So that's something that I think, yeah, that I took from that meeting. The doctors, they spoke about their issues that they're having, with how to go about handling with patients, and the lack of resources. Because of course you would want a lot of psychologists to come, but then if the mental health doesn't get the funding for it, if Turning Point doesn't get the funding for it, then basically we're basically going in a circle. So I think that this meeting, I think, would have to continue with Parliament, and I think that we as Parliament have to now actually look at the budget for, if we want to take these things seriously, and these things are social issues as well. So the Ministry of VSA should also be in these discussions. But I think that if we prioritize these things, and we, like the doctor said, we stop treating mental health as a stigma here in St. Martin, which I think is, the kind of the reality that we have, and start looking at addressing the situation, addressing suicide prevention as per the doctors named it. You have to look at universal prevention, and who is your target audience. The doctor spoke about increasing public awareness, through campaigns, wanting government and local organizations to run media campaigns, through TV, through social media or whatever, to raise awareness about mental health, and about stress management in general, and the available resources that we have in St. Martin, when it comes to, going about, the prevention of these things, encouraging open conversations, about emotions and struggles, especially amongst men. And I think the doctors kind of made that a point as well, to when it comes to men, that's where the stigma, is really high. Men don't like to talk about their mental health and their struggles, and shout out to our own member Marvio Cooks, who's also been active, in trying to preach, and raise that awareness, and being open about mental health, and men's struggles. So they also spoke about the mental health education in schools, trying to incorporate a sort of a mental health education into school curriculums from an early age, so that that can also kind of reduce the stigma and, equip the young people with what they need, the skills, to cope with themselves, to cope with their emotions, and to actually be able to be open to yourself when you think that you need help, So these are the kind of things that we want to look at, of course. And I think Minister Gums from ESUIS. She is also she's been very vocal about this actually when we were back in Parliament last term in opposition, and I think that this is something that she is also going to take up, within the Ministry of Education as well, and in a responsible way, not to make the problem worse than it is, but we do have to educate the kids, and that takes time. Um, Let me see what else did we speak about. Yeah, they also had recommendations for healthcare providers. You know, and this I think that when we look at how in St. Martin we go about mental health and how you actually reach to the Mental Health Foundation, one of the things that's key is that you can't just pick up somebody and bring them to the Mental Health Foundation or Turning Point. That's against the law. Somebody needs to agree to be, taken to a foundation such as that. So I think that that's where we also kind of like have a disconnect where we might see some people on the road, for example, and we think like, oh wow, why is that person on the road, going off, so to say? Why haven't they been picked up? But that kind of goes against your constitutional rights. So again, it's about education and about informing people, trying to have a conversation with them, and see if we can convince them to actually seek the help that they need, and then if they want to, then help them as well. But it really takes a community. We can't look at mental health as kind of like an issue that only government needs to solve. It's actually a community issue, and society and all of us need to like have a helping hand when it comes to that. So these discussions are good to have in Parliament as well, for the people to also see where the representatives stand, and how passionate they are about actually fixing some, not only the monetary issues on the island, but the social issues as well. So looking forward to continuing these discussions. And let me see. Yeah, that was about it for this last week. I believe we had another meeting scheduled. Let me check. We did have another meeting scheduled as well, but that one was postponed. Yeah, that was I think that was the Justice Committee meeting that we were supposed to have, also on the rise in crime and the increase of violence in schools. But that was with many more stakeholders. I think the Youth Brigade and a couple other stakeholders were supposed to be there as well. But again, this was on a day that TLM kind of like fell out. So we could not stream the meeting, and therefore, it had to be available to the public. So we had to reschedule. Sadly, they could not come on Friday. This was Thursday, sorry. So they could not return on Friday because it was kind of hectic to get all of those groups, to reschedule their schedules and see if they can, accommodate us on Friday. That wasn't possible. So hopefully that meeting will be rescheduled. But on Friday we did, continue to have the closed door discussion with the two ministers and the different stakeholders on the rise in crime and the increase of violence in schools. And to be even though we can't divulge too much information from the meeting, I think it's safe to say that my overall conclusion is that both ministers have prioritized this because it's something that's happening a lot, and one of the things that I can say from the meeting is that when you look at the numbers, it may seem as if there is an increase in the rise in crime, especially when it comes to schools. But when you look at the numbers are actually the same. There is no increase. It's more of social media taking a life of its own, and putting these things out there. And actually, to my opinion, that's not that it has its pros and it has its cons. But for me, awareness, the fact that we now know, and I think is one of the good things about social media. But of course, you don't want to see what we see on social media as well, kids fighting in schools, etc. That's just wrong. But yeah, like the ministers concluded too, this is also a joint effort. Education starts at home. So we really have to look at it as a community issue, and tackle it as a community as well. And yeah, I think that was about it for last week in Parliament. This next week is going to be hectic, as I said. We are going to start. I think on Monday we have um, a meeting with the Minister of Finance. I think that's a continuation of a public meeting, and I think that one was concerning the bank account for consumers. Let me see. Yeah, that was the meeting. We have that scheduled for Monday at 2 p.m. The Minister of Finance, Ms. Mirka Gomes, should be there as well. Then on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, we have a closed door meeting for the Committee of Country Expenditures. And this is a discussion on General Audit Chamber's report. Um, I think it was an audit on the allocation of the motor vehicle tax. I am not part of this committee, but I have understood that General Audit Chamber will be there in this meeting as well. So but it won't be live streamed because it's a closed door meeting. And then on Tuesday, we continue at 2 o'clock. We have the committee, I think, for agriculture. We have a presentation on the Swaliga Feed Us floating farms concept by Mr. Louis Engel. He's supposed to be a guest in that committee meeting on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. So looking forward to that one. And then on Wednesday, on the schedule, we have the continuation of the meeting that we had with the Minister of Theat, Ms. Grisha Helga Martin, a couple of weeks ago concerning the issuance and regulation of the licenses for casinos and other gambling activities. Now, you guys know that I'm passionate about the casinos. So, yeah, I'll definitely be there to see how that meeting continues. This meeting, I think, was adjourned on March 12th. And just like Minister Patrice Gomes of Romy, the Minister of Theat also had to come back after the questions in round one to give us the answers, and then to go into clarifications, and then hopefully go into round two, and then see where the meeting takes us. And then Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we have a meeting scheduled for the Committee for Kingdom Relations. As faction leader, I am now part of that committee as well. And it's for the appointment of a vice chairman for the committee, and a discussion on the documents related to the proposed Windward Islands Economic Union in preparation with the SSS cooperative meeting. That's something that MP Raeyhon Williams has been vocal about. I think she was in the press this week about it as well. So looking forward to that one, strengthening, our relationship with our neighbor islands. Then on Thursday, we have scheduled at 10 a.m. we have a meeting with Minister Gomes from ECYS, Minister Melissa Gomes, and that's the same law that we had last week. But unfortunately, we had to reschedule the meeting because we had a next meeting planned. And I think that this meeting, I think we should go ahead and round off this meeting at this point. I think the meeting, the minister has been very clear about the law on higher education that needs to come to Parliament and pass, in my opinion. So let's get it done, guys. Just like we said in the meeting with the minister last time, let's not play any games. Let's just continue, because we need some legislative repair. And it's good to see these ministers actually working on such. And then on Thursday, 2 o'clock, we have a continuation of a meeting with the Minister of Theat, and that's on the update concerning agriculture, and I think agriculture in general. I think we already had a discussion on this topic with the Minister of Theat for the Committee of Agriculture, and I think this is just a continuation. I think the last meeting that we had was on February 5th, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So continuing that discussion with the minister to see how we want to go about, agriculture, and, how we want to go about agriculture in general in St. Martin. What is our vision as an island, and where do we want to take it? And then on Friday, we have on the schedule 2 meetings. Actually, no, the first one is a work visit to the Mental Health Foundation. I'm looking forward to that one. And at 2 o'clock on Friday, we have a continuation with the Ministry of ECYS, where the minister is supposed to be there as well. And it's the Stage of Education Report 2020-2022. And the minister needs to come back. I think that meeting was adjourned on February 13th. So the minister has to come back to continue with that meeting, and hopefully we can round off that committee meeting. I think that's it. That's our schedule for next week. And aside from that, there are a couple of other things as well. There is a couple of events that I'm going to. There's a public lecture on the Kingdom Relations. I think it's Monday at 6:30 p.m. by Meester Tom de Graaf, and where I think it's by the US, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's by the University of St. Martin in the lecture hall from 6:30 to 8 p.m. on Monday, 31st of March, 2025. And this is about kingdom relations. So, and it's actually a lecture that centers around the recommendations of the Kingdom Council of State, the Raad van State, in their celebration of our Kingdom Charter, our statute, reaching its 70th anniversary. And this is actually the topic that was the topic of discussion when I went to Holland in December, which was my first work trip officially. And this was actually the meeting. We actually had a discussion with the Raad van State on it, and that was actually the whole panel that we had. So it's good to see that there is some follow up on it, and I am going to go to that one for sure to see how we can continue it, because one of the things that I remember that the Raad van State did recommend was that we as Saint Martiners, being part of the kingdom, should also have a vote when it comes to the legislative branch of the kingdom, which officially, according to the charter, is the Staten-Generaal, is the parliament in Holland, the Tweede and the Eerste Kamer. So curious to see how that's going to translate into maybe possibly in the future, us as St. Martiners being able to vote for who we want to see in the Tweede Kamer, to also be able to represent us on the legislative level when it comes to kingdom discussions, and yeah, that's something that I look forward to. And yeah, that's gonna be my week for this busy first week of April. And Carnival's around the corner, so hey, let's do some work before everybody takes a break. All right, let me go and jump back to the video now, see if we have any questions. No, not really. I'll give it another minute or two, and then I think we can round off and everybody can go and have a Sunday fun day with the family. I'm going to be chilling with my daughter, as usual. Yeah, man. Lindell, you still tuned in? Yep. All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions, then guys, I wish you all a safe Sunday, and everybody stay safe out there. And see you guys this week in Parliament.